I saw a quote from Jim Cornette. And he was talking about LA Knight, and I just disagree with him 100% because he was saying that LA Knight is currently in the middle of like a dumb storyline, that a pointless feud, that he's like working with bums basically, and it's a waste of his time, especially as US champion. And I think that's just entirely wrong because I get that maybe you want him to have a singular feud, or maybe you want him to go against somebody that might be considered a bigger star than Mello or Andrade. But is anyone really complaining about the feud itself or the matches that we have gotten throughout this feud? Because if you are, then what are you doing? Like, how can you complain about seeing Mello and Andrade like 17 times? How can you complain about seeing either one of them against LA Knight? It is quality every single week. Like, it's funny to me because I feel like, there's probably people who also agree with Cornette, so that's why I'm even mentioning it.
We
And
could get some people. We could get
yeah,
some commenters. I'm
it's
for it.
it's just that I feel this is another example of when people pick and choose what they care about, because depending on the feud, people will be like, "Oh, like the storyline's great, but the matches have been awful," or vice versa. It's like the storyline is so good or the story's so bad, but the matches are so good, and like pretending that one matters more than the other. This feels like another example of that, where it's like, okay, you're getting quality matches and you're getting a good feud between three men right now, and yet you're still complaining. Like, LA Knight is champion. That is what we have been begging for the past nearly 2 years. It took them for like a year and a half to finally do it, and now you're complaining because it's not like, who do you want him to be against on SmackDown?
Who? Like who
Like,
else? What else do you want to do right now with SmackDown? With
yes.
LA Knight, you wanted someone to elevate the US title. Well,
Yes.
putting it on him immediately does something to
Mhm.
it. Now you're putting him in as the third wheel, essentially, in a
Yeah.
feud between Andrade and Carmelo Hayes, both who just want to see who the better wrestler is. Sometimes that's all you need.
And want the
Sometimes you
title. That's all they want.
Well, yeah, to get to the yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you have something like that, it only needs that competitive edge to make it interesting. And then adding LA Knight to it, where you're saying, I don't care who the fuck wins out of you two,
Mhm.
I'm going to beat you. And that's kind of what's happened. That's another way to elevate the champion, legitimize him. He just beat
Yeah.
two guys that are fighting for it, two hungry guys that everyone believes should be a US champ at some point on SmackDown. And he just pretty much flipped them the bird and said, no, it's my time.
Mhm.
That that is how you not only put LA Knight over in a way, but also put the US title over as well.
And Andrade and Mello. Because Mello is
Yeah,
still a
win win
young
win.
guy on the roster that people are mostly unfamiliar with, unless you were an avid NXT watcher. And Andrade's older, obviously,
He was
but
around for Vince.
yeah, but he's like newer-ish in his return to WWE under Triple H, and they haven't really been using him at all. So like, this is his first big storyline since coming back. So I'm like, yeah, so they need to feature these guys on TV every week to be taken seriously and to be legitimate competitors on SmackDown for something like the US title, but it just is all working to LA Knight's benefit. So what's the problem? Like, it just feels like complaining for the sake of complaining. And I
It's
mean,
old
on
school. It's
obviously,
old school thinking.
well, and I can't fault people for all old school thinking, because a lot of the time I can catch myself feeling that way, and there are certain things where I'm like, oh, I miss the way it used to be, or like, no, that's just not how it should be. And so like, I can't fault him completely for that, but I just think that when we're talking about LA Knight, like, there's not a whole lot that you should be complaining about right now. Like, if you put his career into perspective, we should be kissing the ground that Triple H walks on right now, that he finally put
Please.
him gave him a title, finally put him in this like meaningful feud for that title. You know, it's like, to me, that's what we've been asking for. So I have nothing to complain about. If this goes on for another 6 months, sure, complain. But right now, we should be loving every second of it, you know, and this could be another featured match at Crown Jewel as well. Why I would love to see a triple threat. This is what I've been saying. I would love to see a triple threat for the US title. That again only benefits all three of them, including making the US title like a more coveted championship, and that's what we want.
That's all
So
we want,
what
right?
are
Come
we
on.
doing?